Hello and welcome to All 24 Nightly News, coming to you live from Algiers. I'm your host, Karim Zachary, and up next are the top stories. UN General Assembly kicks off and Algerian president conducts high-level diplomacy encounters in New York. Also coming up, with the risk of disease outbreaks and pollution, UN warns of a second devastating crisis in Libya, while the Supreme Council state warns against division in the country. Also ahead, Morocco rescuers seek survivors amidst rubble and urgent aid is needed as hundreds of affected families are sleeping in the open for the 11th day in a row. In our news as well, French organizations and figures call for Sahrawi Republic recognition, and in Spain, the Podemos party renews support for Sahrawi cause. And as part of their prisoner swap deal, Washington confirms Iran has freed 5 Americans, while Tehran announces deposit of $6 billion of frozen funds in Qatar as Biden maintains sanctions. Hello again, and thank you for joining us. And this is just in. Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune was received earlier by his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan at the headquarters of the Turkish Permanent Mission to the United Nations in New York as part of their participation in the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly. The meeting lasted half an hour away from the press and was attended by ministers from both countries. Still with the president's activities, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune engaged in bilateral discussions with Swiss Confederation President at his residence in New York. The Algerian presidency issued a statement confirming this important meeting between the two leaders. The president as well engaged in discussions with the President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, at the United Nations headquarters. A statement issued by the Algerian presidency confirmed the meeting, which was attended by Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf and Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Benjama. At the United Nations headquarters still, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune convened a significant meeting with the President of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ibrahim Raisi. The Algerian presidency released an official statement underscoring the presence of Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf and Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Benjama, at this noteworthy gathering. The 78th United Nations General Assembly session began on Monday and will continue until the 26th of this month. On the occasion, Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for a global rescue plan to advance sustainable development goals in his opening speech. Here's Zahra Farjani with more.
World leaders are coming together at the United Nations headquarters in New York for a week of high-stakes diplomacy at the 78th session of the UN General Assembly. At the opening session of this assembly, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres delivered a speech calling for the adoption of a global rescue plan to achieve sustainable development goals.
Ladies and gentlemen, 8 years ago, member states gathered in the hall to adopt the Sustainable Development Goals. You made a solemn promise to build a world of health, progress and opportunity for all, a promise to leave no one behind, and a promise to pay for it. Yet today, only 15% of the targets are on track, and many are going in reverse. Instead of leaving no one behind, we risk leaving the SDGs behind. So, Excellencies, the SDGs need a global rescue plan.
World leaders adopted the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, promising to leave no one behind. Guterres highlighted the necessity of taking real steps to move forward in ensuring a just and equitable transition from fossil fuels to renewable energies.
The transition to renewable energy isn't happening fast enough. We are putting forward new energy compacts in which governments, businesses, and global organizations join forces to invest in decarbonizing energy systems and ensuring a just and equitable transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy.
As for what he termed the triple planetary crisis of climate change, pollution, and the loss of biodiversity, the Secretary General of the United Nations warned of the repercussions, underscoring the necessity of finding a way to restore ecosystems.
Et de la perte de biodiversité.
In addition to sustainable development goals, there is plenty to discuss in order to halt growing hunger and poverty worldwide and reduce climate catastrophes through strong commitments by member states in the upcoming week of the 2023 UN General Assembly, challenges that need urgent resolutions for global relief.
United Nations agencies warned of potential disease outbreaks in flood-hit Libya on Monday, with over 30,000 affected individuals urgently needing shelter, clean water, food, and supplies. Cholera, diarrhea, dehydration, and malnutrition risks are increasing. The Libyan Red Crescent is considering evacuating Derna to prevent a health crisis. The decision hinges on the evolving health situation, given real risks like corpses and contaminated water.
Both local officials, aid agencies, and the WHO team are concerned about the risk of disease outbreak, particularly from contaminated water and the lack of sanitation. The team continues to work to prevent diseases from taking hold and causing a second devastating crisis in the area.
In related context, the Supreme Council of State in Libya issued a warning against exploiting the flood disaster to further divide the country. President Mohamed Takala, speaking during an emergency session in Tripoli on Sunday, urged those in charge of governing Libya to reconsider their positions, emphasizing the need to unify state institutions and take responsibility for the nation's challenges.
Indeed, the flood waters swept away our dear ones and left behind destruction, the extent of which only God knows. But these floods paved the way for us to sweep away irreversibly all obstacles on which our enemies are betting on to remain erect, and we will no longer leave a place for those who work to divide the country and sow enmity and strife among its people. Thus I call on the responsible for the administration of state affairs to remain their positions in unifying state institutions and to search for ways to mobilize all means possible and to assume their responsibilities towards everything that happens in Libya.
Takala also stressed the need to provide the necessary logistical support to confront the disaster and mitigate its effects, calling for avoiding haste and giving sufficient time for rescue and relief operations.
We must declare our commitment to the principle of accountability and our readiness to bear the consequences of what happened and what will happen as long as we are at the head of state's institutions. From here, I also call for avoiding haste and giving sufficient time to rescue, relief and recovery work, and estimating the extent of the damage, the nature of the needs and the requirements of reconstruction, according to sound planning and specific principles and rules, clear budget estimation and necessary allocation of funds.
Algerian rescue teams are actively working in Derna, Libya, recovering 96 bodies from rubble. Algeria dispatched a team of 113 disaster specialists via an air bridge, providing both expertise and humanitarian aid for flood-affected people. And on the occasion, the Libyan Supreme Council of State commended Algeria for its early and significant support, including aid and relief.
We extend our sincere thanks and gratitude to governments and their affiliated agencies, and to all brotherly and friendly countries that took the initiative to provide all the support and relief requirements to search for victims and missing people, such as Turkey, Algeria, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, Spain, Italy, Russia, and Egypt.
To another tragedy now, Moroccan rescue teams entered the 11th consecutive day of searching for survivors under the earthquake rubble. Damaged villages remain cut off, and many families in major cities are still sleeping outdoors due to the lack of emergency aid. Let's get more updates with Islam Said.
In the wake of the devastating earthquake, the resilient school children in one of Morocco's hardest hit towns rose from the rubble to resume their studies on Monday, finding refuge in makeshift tents. These brave students are just the tip of the iceberg, representing countless others whose educational havens were reduced to dust.
To be honest, it was somewhat difficult given the challenging week we've endured, and now our children are attending school in tents. This is new for us. What happened was catastrophic, but we still thank God. Today we brought our children to be enrolled in school. The experience has been emotionally hard on them.
Are these tents converted into the lonely sanctuaries for distressed families whose queue for meals in Amizmi's camp? Women and children gather on tables eating and chattering in an attempt to drown out the haunting memories of the devastating quake which razed their homes. In other quake-hit areas in Morocco, resilient locals rallied their resources and joined hands with charitable associations to dispatch aid convoys to the hardest-hit regions. Yet in the face of their unwavering determination, they complained the deafening silence of official authorities.
Nobody has arrived yet except local donors. As for the government and this region authorities' assistance, we have received nothing from them. There are only donors who bring us aid and doing this for us.
In the midst of this turmoil, it is the children who bear the heaviest burden to alleviate the profound psychological scars left by the earthquake. Determined locals are crafting playgrounds as a beacon of hope for these young souls. They understand that in the laughter of these children lies the promise of a brighter tomorrow amidst the ruins of today.
I'm very happy with this playground that is being set for us, at least to spend time playing. They set up many beautiful games for us to make us happy.
It's a nice initiative for kids, at least when we gather here. We see our kids playing in front of us, at least to mitigate the impact of the earthquake on them. My kid was traumatized by the quake, but now these playgrounds at least can help our kids forget.
What troubles the residents of the regions affected by the earthquake is the aid delay promised by the government to rebuild the wrecked housing and reconstruct the damaged ones. Their anxiety is not unwarranted, for these lands are notorious for their unforgiving, icy, harsh winters. On that fateful night of September 8th, the earth convulsed under the weight of a tough 6.8 magnitude earthquake, claiming many lives in the mountain villages near the epicenter, where homes crumbled into tragic ruins.
To a different topic now, various French organizations, political leaders and media figures urged France to officially recognize the Sahrawi Republic as a means to enhance peace and stability and human rights in the North African region. The roundtable discussion was attended by experts and individuals concerned with the Moroccan-Sahrawi conflict. Here's Sofiane Kenturi with more.
Polisario Front representative Mohamed Ali Zarwali, along with French political and media figures, as well as activists, gathered in France during the celebration of the 93rd anniversary of humanity and to discuss the crucial cause of Western Sahara. Participants at this debate organized addressed various aspects of this complex conflict and argued in favor of French recognition of the Western Sahara Democratic Republic to promote peace, stability, and human rights in the region. For his part, Mohamed Ali Zarwali stressed that the Western Sahara conflict was a problem of decolonization and insisted on the importance of the application of UN Resolution 1514.
The recognition of the Sadr by the French government would be consistent with the principle of the right to self-determination of peoples, a fundamental principle of international law. This recognition would promote peace and stability in the region, responding to the aspirations of the Sahrawi and Moroccan people.
The human rights activist Claude Monga dedicated her intervention to the human rights situation in the occupied territories of Western Sahara and expressed concerns about the insufficient protection of the Sahrawi civilian population by MINURSO.
It is an issue of right and justice for the Sahrawi people who only want to live in peace on their lands that have never been under Moroccan sovereignty.
Mayor of Ivry-sur-Seine, Philippe Boissou, shared his experience and the visit of delegations of elected officials to the Sahrawi refugee camps last February. He underlined the importance of twinning between his city and Daira Mijak in Western Sahara, while saluting the courage and dignity of the Sahrawi people.
I'm very proud to participate in this roundtable that discusses the situation of the Sahrawi people and the occupation of Western Sahara by Morocco. I shared with my colleagues my admiration for the courage and determination of the Sahrawi people who have been subjected to Moroccan occupation for 50 years and the scandal of that wall, the wall of shame that divided Western Sahara.
This roundtable helped to highlight the crucial issues surrounding the question of Western Sahara and called for recognition of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic by France as a step toward the peaceful resolution of this long-standing conflict.
Moving on, the Spanish Podemos party expressed renewed support and solidarity for the Sahrawi people and the Popular Front for the liberation of Sagi al-Hamra and Wad al-Dahab during a symposium in Madrid on Sunday. The event, held at the Institute of Fine Arts, featured the participation of the Polisario Front's representative in Spain, Abdullah Al-Urabi, and attracted over 1,000 attendees, including Sahrawi supporters and fighters. Party Secretary General Ion Payara highlighted the growing backing for the Sahrawi cause within the party's ranks, encompassing both the political sphere and civil society organizations.
Todavía estamos y seguimos presentes en nuestra.
French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin was welcomed by his Italian counterpart Matteo Piantedosi in Rome, where he plans to deliver a message of firmness in the face of illegal crossings of the Mediterranean after the influx of migrants on the Italian island from Lampedusa.
Et donc, ce que nous voulons dire à nos amis italiens, qui je crois sont parfaitement d'accord avec nous,
What we want to say to our Italian friends, who I believe are in complete agreement with us, is that we must protect the external borders of the European Union and above all immediately to cut asylum requests, and when they are not eligible, send them back to their country.
tout de suite les renvoyer dans leur pays.
The French Minister of the Interior also stressed the need to accompany many migrants, especially to immediately consider asylum requests and return them to their country if they are not eligible.
Mais de notre point de vue, de ce que nous en savons des autorités italiennes, beaucoup
Many migrants will have to be escorted, because I understand again that out of about 8,000 or 9,000 people who have arrived, there are many people who come from countries that do not suffer from political persecution, neither in Cameroon nor in Ivory Coast. So these people must of course return to their countries, and France must help them.
dans leur pays et la France doit les aider.
And speaking of people suffering, Save the Children, an international NGO, disclosed that Sudan's displaced population has surged to over 7 million, including 3 million children. This alarming increase is a consequence or a direct consequence of ongoing armed conflicts between the army and the Rapid Support Forces now spanning 7 months. These clashes have given rise to an unprecedented food and health crisis in the country.
The scary numbers of displacement among children is alarming. It paves the way for many issues like child labor and utilizing those children in criminal activities. Child protection is needed to prevent the worst impacts of the conflict.
To other topical news in the Middle East now, Zionist settlers, heavily protected by occupation forces, intruded into Al-Aqsa Mosque, conducting the provocative visits and Talmudic rituals. The occupation police imposed tight security measures around Al-Aqsa, impeding access for worshippers, citizens, and students, coinciding with the Hebrew holidays. Additionally, the Zionist forces sealed checkpoints around Nablus, conducting thorough searches of Palestinian vehicles and shutting down various checkpoints and roads. In a different story, 5 Americans who spent years imprisoned in Iran have been freed after 2 years of high-stakes negotiations mediated by Qatar, in which the U.S. agreed to unfreeze $6 billion in Iranian oil revenue and dismiss federal charges against 5 Iranians accused of violating U.S. sanctions. Here's Marwa Bilaywer.
White House officials have confirmed that 5 prisoners were freed Monday and headed home as part of a U.S.-Iran swap deal that saw nearly $6 billion in Iranian assets unfrozen.
I had the great pleasure of speaking to 7 Americans who are now free from their imprisonment or detention in Iran, out of prison, and now in Doha, en route back to the United States to be reunited with their loved ones.
Iran's central bank chief acknowledged that some $5.9 billion have been deposited to Iranian accounts after months of talks mediated by Qatar.
Yesterday, we received an official letter from Qatari officials stating that the accounts of 6 Iranian banks have been activated. Today, the equivalent of $5.9 billion was deposited to the accounts of the 6 Iranian banks at Al Ahli and Dukhan banks.
After his arrival in New York to attend the United Nations General Assembly meetings, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi said on the occasion that Tehran's release of 5 American detainees was a purely humanitarian act. Despite the deal, tensions are almost certain to remain high between the US and Iran, which are locked in various disputes, including over Tehran's nuclear program. US President Joe Biden pledged to continue sanctioning Iran. In fact, just right after their prisoner exchange, USA imposed fresh sanctions on former Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and on the country's intelligence ministry.
To Russia-Ukraine file now. Ukraine announced further advances on the eastern and southern fronts in its military counterattack against Russian forces. Ukrainian Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar, before her dismissal, stated that Kiev's forces had reclaimed an additional 2 square kilometers of territory around the destroyed city of Bakhmut in the east. Additionally, Ukraine confirmed the downing of 18 drones and 17 cruise missiles during Russian attack on the territory overnight. The Ukrainian Air Force reported on Telegram that Russia launched 24 drones targeting the Odessa and Mykolaiv regions in southern Ukraine, with their air systems successfully intercepting and destroying all 17 missiles. On Monday, the Ukrainian government removed 6 deputy defense ministers, including Hanna Maliar, who had recently given conflicting statements about the war. The government didn't specify the reasons for their dismissal. Ukraine appointed Rostam Umarov as the new Minister of Defense less than 2 weeks ago, replacing Oleksiy Reznikov amidst corruption allegations within the ministry. Several European Union member states have voiced their opposition to the decision by Hungary, Poland and Slovakia to uphold the ban on the import of Ukrainian grains. They view this move as illegal and a threat to the integrity of the European single market. In response, Ukraine has expressed its intention to take legal action against these 3 countries and file a complaint with or within the World Trade Organization. In a different story, China's top diplomat Wang Yi embarked on a 4-day trip to Russia on Monday, with both nations poised to strengthen political trust and prepare for a potential significant visit by President Vladimir Putin to Beijing in October. Wang's discussions with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, covered a broad spectrum of topics, including high-level contacts. This trip is expected to lay the foundation for Putin's attendance at the 3rd Belt and Road Forum in Beijing, following an invitation extended by President Xi Jinping during a prominent visit to Moscow in March.
We are working under complicated conditions when the world is facing tectonic changes. It is very important that in March of the current year, our leaders, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping, at their summit here in Moscow, define the clear directions of the further deepening of our strategic cooperation and comprehensive partnership. These include cooperation in bilateral affairs, as well as in solving international and regional issues.
China and Russia, being leading world powers and permanent members of the UN Security Council, bear a special responsibility in terms of maintaining the global strategic stability and peace. The fiercer the unilateral actions of hegemony aimed at confrontation, the more important it is for us to fulfill our international obligations according to the sense of duty inherent in great powers.
That concludes today's news bulletin. For more updates, check our social media channels. Thank you for watching and goodbye for now.